Hey guys, Dr. Shook here. Hope you're doing well. I got a few minutes. I want to share something with you guys. So I was talking to someone today about wheat and about we'd had a previous conversation, and she was really surprised by some of the things I told her about wheat, because it's not what you think. Like, you guys have all heard about gluten-free foods and stuff. And I know most of you have, and how gluten has been demonized. And you'll hear a lot of your doctors and a lot of people saying that there's no problem with gluten, and it's a fad, and they're, quite frankly, I'm going to say they're wrong. That I think that gluten is a very huge problem, and I want to talk to you about why. Because what you think is probably not the whole story. So first of all, let me just tell you guys something. Gluten poses a tremendous number of problems for a lot of different reasons. The first thing I want to tell you is I'm getting ready to share some information with you guys, and I want to start by saying, get this book first of all. If you haven't, this book was written in like 2011. It was it's called Wheat Belly by William Davis. Hey Vaughn, hope you're doing well. It's called Wheat Belly by William Davis, and it's a fantastic book, and it's still so true, and it tells you so much about the story of wheat. But let me explain something to you. The wheat that we eat today that contains gluten is completely different than the wheat that was present 100 years ago. Drastically different than the wheat that was thousands of years ago. And the wheat has been changed, and man has been primarily responsible for that. We've taken wheat that had, a few, the original wheat form had, I think it was 8 chromosomes. And what's happened is, I'll just keep it from being too technical. What they did was they took wheat that was let's say 6 feet tall. Okay, so the wheat would grow 6 feet tall. And that was like more of the original wheat that was present thousands of years ago. And what they did was they crossbred it to make it into strains of wheat that they could more easily harvest. Okay, for one thing. They continued, and so as we get into the 21st century, and in the past few hundred years, the past 100 years really, scientists began really crossbreeding it. And they were doing this in a way, this began with like the Rockefellers, and there was an organization in Mexico where they had warmer climates where they could take the wheat and they could have 2 crop cycles. So crossbreeding requires you to have a growth cycle, right? So before genetics, which I'll get to in a second, and genetic engineering, they would actually hybridize the plants. And so what they were doing was they were trying to breed in properties that would make the plants more desirable for, they were trying to do the right thing. They were trying to, they were trying to, cure world hunger, which is a very noble thing to do. So what they started doing was crossbreeding all the wheat, because wheat's very resistant. Wheat can grow in all kinds of different environments, guys. I mean, it's very some of the strains are very durable. And so what they did was start crossbreeding it so that they could get a greater yield from it. Guys, the yield from wheat now, as compared to the original wheat, is like 10 times for a field. It's like 10 times the amount they can get the yield from the harvest. So what I really, what's ended up happening is this. They've hybridized the wheat, which has changed the protein structure. They've hybridized it and crossbred it so that it can sit in silos and not get moldy as quickly. So they get a greater yield from it. So instead of it being like 4 or 6 feet tall, now we have stuff called dwarf wheat, which is like this really short wheat that has been not only hybridized and crossbred, but now we have this thing called genetic engineering. So now they'll take a gene and insert it into the wheat, and changing the fundamental fabric of the wheat, the genetics of the wheat. They change it, genetically engineering it, which, by the way, for years there was no regulation of this. They were like, oh well, it's just wheat, right? We just change the genetics and it's just wheat. And this is the thing too, like, hybridization, because they were comparing like genetically altering the wheat to hybridization, which is basically breeding in different genetic traits. So like, well, we're just basically doing the same thing that hybridization does when we genetically engineer the wheat, except we're just accelerating the process. We're just doing it manually. We're inserting genes. And so what happened is they changed the wheat fundamentally, guys. They've changed it in a major way very, very quickly. And now there are like thousands of different strains of wheat. So the wheat proteins are different. It completely has different characteristics than it used to have. I mean, dwarf wheat now is what we're dealing with. So let me explain a few things. Now they're inserting genes into the wheat so that big agriculture and a lot of the companies that make herbicides that you can dump all over the wheat. So you don't listen. It's a lot easier for a farmer to spray a chemical all over the food or all over the growing crop than it is for them to go out and manually weed it, right? So it's convenient if you've got a crop that you can just dump herbicides all over, and it will kill the surrounding weeds that are starving, that are taking some of the nutrients from your crop. And then it also helps. They can dump these herbicides all over the wheat at the time of harvest, and it helps to increase the yield. So what ends up happening is they've genetically modified the wheat, which makes it different. The protein structure is different. Okay, then it's a completely different, on a genetic level, it's different than anything that we've ever been exposed to. Okay, so and then they make it so it's Roundup ready. That's what it's called. It's called Roundup frickin' ready. And this stuff is just dumped, pesticides or herbicides are dumped all over it. And the seeds that are made, like, so they can patent the seeds for the wheat. Like the companies patent the seeds. Monsanto, who makes the seeds, also sells the herbicide conveniently. And so they sell them the seeds, they grow the wheat, then they dump all these herbicides all over it to keep the weeds from growing. Then they dump it on it again to improve the yield and of the harvest. So then you're getting a fundamentally genetically different wheat. You're getting with herbicide residues all over it, loaded with it. Then it gets put in a silo. So here's the thing. Think about this for a second. It gets put in a silo. So now you've got a genetically different wheat than we had, than our bodies developed with, right? Than we evolved with. You've got herbicide residues all over it. Then you put it in a silo. So what happens if the humidity goes up? What happens if the humidity goes up? Well, then you're dealing with what? Potentially molds, right? Mold. So when you get mold growth, guess what they're doing now? So all these things, now they're irradiating the freaking wheat to kill the fungi or the mold that's growing on it, to decrease the toxicity. So you're potentially eating something now that's fundamentally different on a genetic level than it ever was. It has herbicide residues all over it, and it may have mold. Okay, it may have mold mixed into it, and it may have been irradiated, radiation to the wheat to kill some of the mold. So all these four things, then on top of that, then they're going to process it into the finest powder that no human could have ever manually processed it into. That it's literally machine processed into this super ultra fine powder that allows you to absorb it at a much higher rate. Then it's mixed with all kinds of artificial food additives and things like yeast to make it rise. You know how many people react to yeast that I work with? A ton of people react to yeast. It's one of the things that I think triggered my autoimmunity. And guys, so I'm going to tell you that wheat is a big deal, and it's not just the fact that it's the protein gluten. It's not at all. It's that it's fundamentally different than it's ever been, because we have meddled with it. The more that you guys listen to me talk, the more you're going to hear me come back to one thing. The further that we get from how we're supposed to interact with our environment, the more and more sick we become. We as humans have this ability to do all these great creative things, and what do? We mess up our environment. We mess it up not only for ourselves, not only for us, but we mess it up for all of our children and everyone else to come. We do all these things with all these environmental chemicals that we're dumping in, and we do all of we go through all of these processes out of convenience, and we have separated ourselves so far from what it truly means to be healthy, and from what it, I call it the true human experience. We don't even know what it means to be human. We have no instinct left. We are forgetting everything that's old for all this new convenient stuff. And what happens? Cancer explodes. You've got these explosions in all kinds of autoimmune diseases. You've got explosions in diabetes, heart disease, neurodegenerative conditions. So Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, exploding epidemic levels, and everybody wants to reach for a medication. You tell me, we are doing all these things to mess up everything, and everybody wants to act like that's not a problem. It's a problem. It's like we lack common sense sometimes. I mean, seriously, it's just like, are you joking almost? That the only thing that we're going to look at to help people with all these problems is a medication? Are you kidding me? What is causing this to begin with? You know what I mean? I'm not saying I know, but I'm saying that I at least am going to look at this a little bit differently than just thinking that a medication is the only answer. Yeah, I'm glad that we have medications so that we can help people with symptom-based management as much as possible. But there is no way that you can sit here and tell me that you can ignore what's driving these epidemics. I mean, listen, guys, we're going to bankrupt the healthcare system. There are not enough people to care for. The surge of all the people with all these things that I just mentioned coming in the near future. We have got to fundamentally change the way that we think and that we look at things. You cannot just stick your head in the sand. You have to acknowledge this stuff. The food that we're eating, the genetic modification of everything, the massive pollution that is occurring. I mean, I sit here and I say this stuff and I'm like, I sound kind of crazy sometimes. I'm thinking to myself, I never would have predicted that I would be in the place that I'm in talking about these things in our environment, but it's absolutely the truth. You tell me why it's happening, and I'll just point you back to everything that we're screwing up as humans, that we think we're creating, right? We're just violating the laws of nature. We're just killing ourselves, guys. And this is just a great example. So many people don't understand when we talk about wheat. I mean, it's a lot more than just the wheat protein. You know what? The wheat that was probably first here, the first wheat, and there's So guys, and I want to mention something to you. If you're seeing the inverse, but it's wheat belly. If some of you guys have probably read this book, it's by William Davis. Fantastic book. You want to know about wheat? You want to know about a lot more than I'm telling you? Get his book. It's a really, really good book, and it will convince you that we have completely destroyed our wheat. Now, here's the interesting thing. The ancient forms of wheat, if you can still find them, they might be okay. They might be okay if they're organically raised. They might be okay. But there's just a lot more to it than it just being gluten. No, it's not. There's a modern form of wheat that's been genetically modified, that's being completely saturated with herbicides at multiple phases during the growth cycle. It is then stored in silos where it can get moldy. Then the moldy wheat is actually getting radiated to kill some of the mold, because the mold's so toxic. And then they're processing it into this finely pounded stuff that you're feeding your kids, your family, the people that you care about. I'm telling you, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Call me what you will. I don't care. If I'm just trying to help people better take a look at what's happening. I know it's a problem. I know it's a problem because you know why? Because when we take people off of wheat and off of a lot of these foods that are really problematic, like soy, like corn, and a lot of other things that are being genetically modified, and a lot of similar things are happening to, they do better. They do better. So I wanted to do this, share this with you guys today because I promised someone that I would do that, and I wanted to do it before I left the office. But I got to get out of here. We got quite a few people on here, and I know that you guys are posting a bunch of comments. Please post your questions here too, because we'll look at them. We'll look back over them. We've been really busy lately, but I'm trying to make sure that you guys can post post your questions. I'm going to try to make sure that I get back to you. How about this? I'll spend. What time is it? Let me look at the time. Okay, I'm gonna spend 2 minutes. Let me see if I can go through these real quick. Hey Vaughn. Hey Michelle. Hey Randy. Appreciate it, man. I had a good Father's Day. Hope you did too, buddy. Hi April. More loads of bread per bushel. Randy was farmer, man. He knows all about the wheat. Yeah, it's crazy the yield, how it's increased with the modifications they've made. So Randy says, guys, Randy is on here with us. Randy owned a farm. He says, they told me on my farm that eventually they would insert a designer gene that would recognize cancer cells as foreign. Crazy, and probably so. Randy, probably so. Listen, genetic engineering and bioengineering is really exploding. Yeah, Melissa, bad for everyone, especially thyroid patients. Debbie, you are welcome. My pleasure. Yes, please do. Wheat Belly, if you got this, if this is on your shelf, please do it. Hey Jenny. Hey Shirley. Yeah, absolutely, man. There's so many things in our environment, and really our food, that we have to look very critically at. And it's a shame. It's a shame because it's really affecting so many people. April, hey, is it true that going gluten-free if you don't have celiac disease is dangerous? No, not at all. You can have extremely vibrant health with going gluten-free, and really there's a lot more than gluten allergy. Like there's gluten sensitivities, and there's different ways you measure that immunologically. But I'm just telling you that, like, if you're eating wheat, you're probably eating a cocktail of poison and problems. Okay, even if you don't have a gluten sensitivity. Glyphosate, which is Roundup, guys. Glyphosate is a chemical that they spray on it, and that's what the Roundup Ready seeds are like. And if you look up Stephanie Seneff, she is an MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. She's a researcher. If you look up her research, she's been looking and doing correlation studies on glyphosate, which is Roundup, and increased rates of all kinds of disease processes, and it will blow your mind. There's studies out there that are showing that glyphosate induces and increases intestinal permeability, which is what we call leaky gut. So what happens is, if it makes your gut more permeable, you're going to get more exposure to everything, including food proteins. It's going to drive more autoimmunity and other issues. You got to get it out of your diet. Is it true that going gluten-free if you don't have celiac disease is dangerous? No, it is absolutely not dangerous to go gluten-free if you don't have celiac disease. I'm actually an advocate of going gluten-free no matter what. I just think it's a better way for most people to live. There are a lot of people that have different opinions on it, but I'm telling you, like what I just shared with you guys, and what you'll find out is if you can, there's people that can eat it, but you're just much better off going gluten-free. You are welcome, Shirley. Hey, Doreen. Thank you so much. Any pills to empower autoimmunity? Any pills to empower autoimmunity? If I was gonna say that something that could potentially improve autoimmunity, does anyone know what I'm gonna say? What am I gonna tell you as far as a vitamin goes? If I'm talking about autoimmunity or the immune system function, what am I gonna recommend? I'm gonna recommend a vitamin that acts like a hormone in the body. Vitamin, not A, not B, not C, but vitamin D, right? So anything to empower autoimmunity. If I'm going to balance, if I'm looking at someone that's autoimmune, I'm going to order vitamin D levels on them. But we're going to try to see, vitamin D helps to improve immune system regulatory function. So it helps with the production of regulatory T cells, which helps to balance the immune system. Most people are vitamin D deficient, especially those that are autoimmune. So you'd want to get your vitamin D checked, and I try to get the vitamin D levels to the top 3/4 of the laboratory reference range, which is going to be usually a blood serum level around 70, okay? 50 to 70 at least, okay? Sonia, nutritional yeast is bad too. I took nutritional yeast when I was in college. I was reading all these forums on bodybuilding. So I was lifting weights all the time, and I was looking for ways that I could get more amino acids into my body. So what do? I learned about nutritional yeast, and what I did, I took a huge tablespoon of yeast, and no kidding, It's crazy. I just think about it. But this is what I read, right? So, and here I am, supposedly getting educated, educating myself. This is how you can screw yourself up online, guys. Don't believe everything you read, or don't do everything you read. It might be appropriate for some people, but not for everyone. So I took nutritional yeast by the tablespoon, and I just swallowed it and washed it down with water. It was like a bomb went off in my body. Like, no kidding, like probably 10 minutes later. My hair started tingling. It felt like I had things, like my skin was crawling, like I was getting a sympathetic response. My hairs were standing up. I was getting like goosebumps. Absolutely crazy. And my gut was completely different for like 6 months after that. Like, you're talking about, and I'm going to be a little graphic here, but it's just I don't care. I'm not shy. I had literally mucus-like stool after that. Like, it had all kinds of bowel and gut inflammation. That's when I started to develop psoriasis, like very shortly after that. I mean, I was doing a lot of things that triggered my genetic expression of my autoimmune, my predisposition towards autoimmunity. I was using bodybuilding supplementation that had high levels of arginine in it. Now, arginine is an amino acid that some of you may take as a supplement to help improve blood flow. And I'm going to tell you right now, you got to be very, very careful with arginine as a supplement, because it will improve blood flow, but it also stimulates the nitric oxide system in your body, in particular inducible nitric oxide, and that stimulates inflammation, and that promotes autoimmunity and a lot of inflammatory problems. So inducible nitric oxide synthase is not what you want to stimulate. And I was doing that. I was taking arginine as a supplement, and I took this nutritional yeast, and no kidding, it was like a bomb went off in my body, an inflammatory bomb. And now, whenever I've done sensitivity testing, I'm off the charts to yeast. Like, I react to yeast like crazy. Still to this day, I can't have yeast. So really interesting, Sonia. So I'm really, really leery of anything with yeast. I mean, some people are so sensitive to yeast that they can't even have fermented foods until they get their immune system under control. So even things like kombucha, things like that can create problems. Nicole says, is organic wheat a safer option? If you're going to eat wheat, it definitely needs to be organic. Absolutely, 100%. Jenny says, hey, how about gluten and autism? My 7-year-old son has autism. We're definitely going gluten-free anyways. Just was wondering. Man, autism is such a difficult thing to, we don't really understand what drives it, but I'll tell you this. I think that there are, obviously genetic and environmental factors at play. And I would do anything and everything to remove potential immune-stimulating compounds, things that could increase and promote intestinal permeability, anything that can induce leaky brain, that can open up the blood-brain barrier. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. I would definitely be gluten-free for sure. So hope that helps, Jeannie. Hey Lisa, you're welcome. Hey April, so it said that you're not getting the fiber and vitamins or iron that you would normally get when eating gluten. So eat things like, eat some of the ancient grains, like a lot of people can do like quinoa, amaranth, some of those things. Eat your leafy vegetables. You're going to get iron sources from that. And you can get tons of fiber. Consume things like, if you can do it, right, if you're not, like, we're not talking autoimmune paleo, but as long as you don't react to it, consume ground flaxseed, consume chia seed and things like that. Don't overdo it, because some of those things can actually, too much fiber, and especially like chia and things like that, they can bind to your nutrients and carry them out of the body. So which you don't want it to eliminate all of the nutrients in the food. But there are a lot of ways to get your your fiber and vitamins. So listen guys, there's some people that can probably consume gluten perfectly fine and have no problems, but definitely the modern I would not consume. It would have to be organic, absolutely, so you don't have it loaded with all, so it wouldn't be genetically modified, it wouldn't be covered in pesticides. You would want it to take care. Hey Carrie, you nailed it. You were first, Carrie, you got it. Randy, you got it too. Anna, good job. You are welcome. Shirley, you got it. D3, absolutely, Shirley, D3 is the active form. How many times did I take the yeast? April, I'm a glutton for punishment, so I do really dumb things a lot, or I used to. I took the nutritional yeast probably like 3 or 4 times. Oh, because I was convinced it was something else. I was like, no, it's got to be right. This is going to help me. I'm going to get big muscles. Oh, it's whatever, right? Hey, Randy. Test word, not the full pic. The insurance won't allow them to order. Yeah, Randy, that's so true, man. The blood test, the conventional medicine. Listen, guys, the conventional medical model is not bad. It just does not support further investigation because under their guidelines, the testing's not medically necessary. So you're faced with, like, when you're trying to figure out things like from this more nutritional perspective, unfortunately, you're gonna be faced with paying for testing. And I just don't, until it's different. That's why we've got to continue to educate, continue to show evidence for these types of this type of healthcare, so that we can get insurance to pay for it. Because I sincerely believe that if we spent, just a small fraction of the money that we spend on keeping people alive that have, like, diabetes, for example, and preventing and working and maintaining, some of their extending their lifespan with just diabetics. If we just spent that money on prevention and on the front end, and even if we bought food for people, we would see major improvements and decreased healthcare costs. So yeah, it's just the system's not there yet, and there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of money involved. Sonia, you think that's why you have Fred Flintstone feet? What about drinking organic apple cider vinegar, Tracy? It's usually okay. It's not usually a problem for people. Some people do react to it, so there are some food sensitivity tests that will look at that. But also some of the yeast that can be wild strains in there can be problematic. I don't find that I have problems with, like, kombucha necessarily, or apple cider vinegar, or fermented foods, but I definitely used to. April, good question. Where you can find organic wheat? Probably an organic, like a health food store. It's going to be the best place. You can probably search it out online. Hey, Jenny, you're welcome. Randy, awesome. So Randy's a farmer. Randy's always on here. He's awesome resource. He said there's old strains of wheat still grown in Italy. Maybe wild wheat is a better choice. Gluten-free is easy. Yeah, Randy's been gluten-free. Awesome job, Randy. Yeah, there are, like, that's the thing, guys. There are strains of wheat that are still out there. Okay, so don't think that it's all is lost. It's not. Yeah, so Shirley says, hey, we carry ancient grains and organic flours down at our health food store, Country Life. Awesome. Perfect. You're welcome, April. Nicole, you're welcome. The solution I've been paleo for after just finished. Hey, Marianne. Just finished the 6-week fitness challenge. I'm still having a very difficult time losing weight. I am 5'4", 179. Did lose 9 pounds in the 6-week fitness challenge, but worked extremely hard for that. Supplementation daily with vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, anti-inflammatory, etc. Any additional ideas for me? Marianne, and if you've done all those things, if you haven't had any testing done, you need to get some testing done to help you better uncover what's going on, because you've done a ton. So Marianne, guys, Marianne's just sharing she just said that she's read Grain Brain, Wheat Belly, Paleo Solution. She's been paleo for a year and a half. She just finished a 6-week fitness challenge. She's done all kinds of stuff, and she's still having problems losing weight. It's helped, but she's still having problems. And any other ideas? And so, Marianne, when you've put in all that work, get some testing done to help you figure out what's going on, because there's probably something that that you can't determine through the trial and error approach. So sorry I can't give you more